So today we start a new series, and the title of this series is We Came to America to Perform. And one of the things that we talked about, we being my colleagues on this project, Deborah Walk, who is the curator of the Circus Museum, and Maureen Zaremba, who is our curator of education, is we talked about the impact that the people who came to this country, who immigrated to this country, made not only on the circus, but on the culture of this nation, and most particularly of this city. So we're going to talk this fall to 4 great circus artists who came to America to perform on the greatest show on earth. I have to thank especially a man named Paul Gracia. Paul, are you here? Yeah. Paul goes through the archives and through the files at the Circus Museum and does a whole lot of research on our guests, which makes me look really smart, like I did all of that work and I didn't. Paul did it. So thank you, Paul, for your contribution to this program. Which brings me to our first guest in this series, Evie Kelly-Lentz. She was born in Germany, was invited to join the Ringling show as an acrobat in 1954. And there she met and married, and I think by many accounts, eventually managed the career of the great Emmett Kelly. And through it all, Evie has called Sarasota her home. We're going to talk about all of that and more, but join me now in welcoming Evie Kelly-Lentz.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
The guests and I usually have a long time to talk and chat before our program begins. And as I was saying to Evie, people who have led lives like she has, I don't know whether you often realize how extraordinary they seem to those of us who weren't born into Germany in the mid part of the 20th century and everything that meant, who became an acrobat, was asked to join the greatest show on earth, married a clown. I mean, you married a clown.
I did.
and all of these experiences through the golden age of television and up until now, she has already told me so much. I'm not sure we're going to fit it all in, so I know what you're thinking. Stop talking, Dwight, and let her. But let's start in Germany. You're a very young girl in Germany, and you decide you're going to train to be an acrobat.
All right. I had a sister who was in the business in those days. It wasn't so much the circus because she had a little act, only 2 girls, and through her I had a chance to meet the person who trained her partner years prior to that. I had a chance to meet her because I was little. I like almost any child, does a little split and does a little handstand. This particular lady was the widow of a gentleman who had an agency in Berlin, the Grigorys agency, but they kept going with little acts, and she was looking. This lady was in my hometown of Leipzig, and she was looking for another girl to train to be in an act, and she was there in my hometown on a cabaret stage with this other act. So she told me, she says, well, can I meet you? Can you come down and show me what you can do? So I came and I met the lady and I showed her whatever I could do, and she liked what she saw. She said, well, you're petite, you're agile. When you are done, I had a little while to go to school, and shortly after my 15th birthday, my parents made a contract with the lady. Shortly after my 15th birthday, I got my little things together. I had a little suitcase. We didn't have much. This is shortly after the war. This is 47. I had one little suitcase all by myself. went to the train station, got a ticket, got on the train, and went to Berlin. And of course, Berlin was burned out. It was in ruins. It was sad. But anyway, when I got to the train station, I did not know somebody was supposed to pick me up. There was nobody there. It was late in the late evening. I think it was probably like today, because my birthday was just a few days ago. So anyway, there was nobody there. It was gloomy. It was cold. I asked somebody where Augsburger Straße street is. They said, well, just get out of here and keep on walking past the Memorial Church. Most everybody knows the bombed out Memorial Church. So it took me a little while, but most all the houses were destroyed on both sides. There was just rubble everywhere. But then I finally found my destination. I went upstairs, knocked on the door, rang the bell. There was nobody there. I went back down and proceeded to do this a couple of times up and down, because there was a couple, they run this apartment, and they let me come in, and they said, well, they're supposed to be here. I'm not going to drag this on, but I went up one more time, and I was going up, and a gentleman and a little girl were coming down, and they said, are you Evie? And I said, yeah. And that little girl, Uschi, was my to-be partner from then on, and she still lives here too. So that's it. That's that part.
I'm going to back you up.
Okay.
So your sister was in the business.
Yes.
What did your parents do?
My parents, my mother was a mother. She was a baby machine. We were 8.
It's good to have a job.
Well, you know, in those days, not too many women worked, but my mother worked with 8 kids.
There were 8 of you. Where did you fall in that 8?
Number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5.
And your sister was older? That was the acrobat?
My sister was, yeah, she was 6 years older. And they had a wonderful little act called the Two Louisianas. They worked on a short pedestal. They did contortioning and acrobatics. And you know, right after the war, they had a really nice act. They were well known in the business of, it was all staged in those days,
right.
You know. And a 2-girl act is not enough for a circus anyway.
Yeah. So, but you trained through the war? You
No, I did not train. I tumbled by myself, but I didn't train. I trained in Berlin. And I wasn't there more than, let's say, 6 months, and she had me working. Uschi and I first had a little act called the Two Grigorys, and we played little theaters. We never did a circus. We did, right after the war, we did all these, the soldiers, the American zone, the British zone, the Russian zone, with those clubs for the soldiers. We worked a lot of those. And in 1950, Circus Barley, the first time after the war, a international circus was put together. And since my boss knew so many people, and she was in the business, Circus Barley was looking for a bigger act, and she was told, I love to have the girls, but we got to have more than 2 girls. So there were these 2 sisters. They also had an acrobatic act, and we combined the 2 acts and made 4 out of it, and it went. And we worked this circus, Circus Barley, for the first time. And in those days, all performers looked what the critiques would say, and the critiques said, the Berlin newspaper said, and there were those 4 girls. They were tumbling, and they were just like a whirlwind. And that's where we took the name from, the Four Whirlwinds. And I've been a whirlwind ever since.
And your friend Uschi, who you've known since 1947,
Yes.
she lives in Sarasota
She
now
lives
too.
in Sarasota, and we worked together for so long, but unfortunately she couldn't be here for health reasons. And she just lost her husband last year. She is still very, very sad. But I'm sad she's not here.
So you started to perform with the International Circus.
Right.
And you were touring Europe.
From there on, once we had been seen by the public and got publicity, immediately we got contracts. Our first time away from Berlin as the Four Whirlwinds, we went to Hamburg, a very well-known, again, a theater, the Hansa, was it the Hansa? Yeah, the Hansa Theater. From there, we went, the first time we left Germany, we went to Copenhagen, to the Valencia Theater. That is where I understand the great Lillian Lietzel fell to her death many years prior to us being there. And it was beautiful, and it was so interesting to hear another language everywhere. But it was wonderful. The people were great. Even so, it was that shortly after the war, and immediately we got another contract to go. I think we went from there to. I think we went to Copenhagen. No, not Copenhagen. We went to Stockholm. We went to Stockholm, Circus Schumann, and then Circus Schumann also had another place in. Then we went under tent with them for a little while, and we got contracts to go. We went to Paris twice. One time it was a theater called the ABC Theater. I don't think it's still there. We also went to England. We went to England because my boss's son had something to do with the theater. But anyway, we went to England, and we played on stage in London, and then we got a contract to go to Leeds and to Birmingham to be part of their pantomime. I'm sure there's some Britishers in here, Humpty Dumpty and Mother Goose, and they worked our act into the shows, and it was fabulous because it was always when the weather is cold, and we had a great dressing room, and the people were wonderful, and they were still on ration cards in England. I remember that.
I have to ask, were you more successful than your older sister?
Oh yes, my sister, they never, you see, that was, then Germany was divided. They were still in East Germany, and they just couldn't get out. They visited us one time in Berlin, but they just couldn't get out, and she wasn't in too long. And, but anyway, no. We were whirlwinds, really.
And then you were, in 1953,
yes.
You were scouted by...
Okay, in 1953, we had one whole summer in Denmark, and the end of the season, we performed Circus Lewis in Copenhagen. And that's when our agent told us John Ringling North is coming to scout for new talent. And we know, because we knew when he was coming, so we put on our best costumes. And we also had the usher. What you have to do on some circuses, you do something else besides your act. And this was really great. We learned that they made us beautiful uniforms, and we learned a little bit of the language. So it was very nice. So when we first met Mr. North, we shook hands with him as ushers. And then when he saw our act, we were hired, I think, on the spot, because we were all young. I was the oldest one at 21. The others were all younger. So we were hired and came the next year. Any further?
Had you seen, I mean, the movie was out by then, The Greatest Show on Earth. Had you seen that movie?
Strangely enough. We were in Paris at the time. I remember that. And the other two girls, their parents traveled with us at times. So they went to see The Greatest Show. I never heard of it. And Uschi and I, we went to see, I can't remember what it was, so I don't want to bother you with that. We saw something else, and they told us later on they saw The Greatest Show on Earth. And I said, oh, well, I never even heard of him. So no, I didn't. I'm sorry.
No, that's interesting. So you get invited to come to the United States.
We were, the agent made a contract with the show, with Mr. North, and we were to come the following season, which would be 54. So we came from Cherbourg in France. We crossed the English Channel to go to Southampton, England, to get on the Queen Mary to cross the Atlantic Ocean. It was supposed to take 7 days. The crossing was great. There was no problem. Nobody got sick. As we were coming closer, I remember looking at the menu of the Queen Mary for the farewell dinner that said March 28th. So as we were coming closer to New York, we hear over the speaker, or some other way that we were not going to dock in New York. And we're going on to
You went someplace in Canada, didn't you?
Yeah.
Nova Scotia?
We went to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Said, what are we going to do in Halifax, Nova Scotia? Hey, so they took us because there was a strike going on. And as young girls, what are they striking about? Why don't they let us off, you know? But it's not that easy. So we were told we're going on to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and which probably included really another day to get back. And we were told they're going to fly, because we had to go for rehearsal. We were supposed to be at Madison Square Garden. So we were flown from Halifax to, what was it called in?
Idlewild.
Oh, Idlewild. We were flown to Idlewild. Only we four, because the parents of these other two girls were with us. So they flew us in. I don't know who paid for that, either the ship line or the circus. I'm not sure. I'm sure it was the ship line, because it was their fault that we didn't get here, right? So now we are... I don't remember if we took a taxi or if because we are from Berlin, we've been to London, we've been to Paris, so a little bigger city didn't make that much difference.
Did you speak English?
Yes, I did. Not like I do now.
But you made
oh, yes.
So did you go like straight from the airport to Madison Square Garden?
Yes, we went straight to the garden because we did not know where we're going to live. That is a part that would be told to you when you get there. And when we got there, Mr. Waldo, you know who that was? No. He was he took care of all the people, the director, not the director, the director. Everybody knows Pat Waldo, I'm sure. But anyway, he said, how did you get here? Well, we're whirlwinds. We flew in.
So you get to Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
You're now going to be a part of... How do you just become a part of the Ringling Brothers?
First, when we walked in, of course, I had never been in a big place like Madison Square Garden, even so we've been many places, but not that big. And when you see 2 rings, 3 stages, or the other way around, 3 rings and 2 stages, and all these acts having to work, which is very hard for us. It almost hurts because you don't have your music. And there's these 5 acts having to work at the same time. You get used to it, but it's strange. It's very strange when you have in our case, we had the young brothers and sisters. They are beautiful, hand balancing in the middle. They were with us. And by the way, that display of acrobats, to me, maybe I'm jumping the gun, I'm
No.
going too fast. That was so marvelous. There, believe it or not, there were all German acts except one. They were British, but all the other acts were Germans. And of course, on the Ringling show, every act, these 5 acts, they all wear the same costumes. And it was so beautiful to watch when they walked out, the march of the gladiators. They came from that end and they came from that end and walked like that, and everybody went into the ring. That part was really beautiful. That was beautiful. Now,
I'm curious, because it's only 9-10 years after the war.
yeah.
And was there a problem with being German in America at that time?
Not at all. Like I said, there were so many Germans already here before I came. No, none at all, none at all. I never, ever felt discriminated or somebody saying, oh, you're German. No. But I heard some of it with town people, we call them, we're circus artists, with not towards us, but among them, some of the people who have probably been here, some Germans who have been in this country maybe 20 years or 25 years prior to the time I came, they had some problems, but not us. Never circus artists.
So now you're part of the greatest show on earth, and
Yes.
the show, I believe, started at Madison Square Garden.
Yes.
So now you went on the tour for the year,
Right.
and this was an interesting bit in the research that Paul provided. For the most part, the clowns were told to stay away from the rings, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, my future husband had the privilege to go in any time and look at any act if they allowed it, So he would, I never even met Emmett Kelly before.
Did you know who he was?
No, I didn't know who he was. Well, after the Boston Garden, this all started after the Boston Garden. Emmett would come around and do whatever he was singing, and he would sit on our ring curve. And we kept saying, what does he want? What's he doing? We weren't used to that. In Europe, you don't do that, And he would just sit there and kind of flirt with me, every time I was over on that end or something. And but the public watched him wherever he went. The public kept going to that. Their eyes to that act, because that's where Emmett Kelly is.
So when you're competing in 3 wings and 2 stages, it's not bad to have Emmett.
No, right. And I heard later on the beginning, a lot of acts said, well, I don't want him there. And then I heard well-known performers say, hey, why don't you come over and see me in my act, because it's the attention they get.
So now he starts hanging around your ring.
Yeah.
And, I want to get to the part where you fall in love and get married, but I'm trying to make a leap from a clown hanging around your ring.
All right. Of course, I'm talking now on the road, in the tent. We had to do our washing in 2 little buckets. We wash our clothes, and God knows what we all do in that water. And Emmett would come by. When you're on the show, it's not just like dating and see somebody once a week. You see this person about 3-4 times a day. So he would come by and he would tip his hat, and all he would say. And one day he knew a few words in German. I think he had a German girlfriend before me. He would say, Guten Tag, and I would say, well, hello, how are you? And he said, oh, do you speak English? I said, yes, I do. So little by little, he would walk by, and we just talk, just say, where are you from, and all that. And one day he said to me, hey, Evie, would you like to go have lunch with me someday? I said, well, let me see what the girls think. And even so, I was of age, but I never, when you're in that business, you don't date. We never had time to do that. We just didn't. So, and then I didn't know how old he was either. So anyway, I said, well, let me see what, and the girls and the parents were here. They said, well, look, if he's nice and he treats you well, why not? You're just going out for lunch. I said, okay. So we came around. I said, yeah, it's all right. So now, I don't remember the number of the wagon he was dressing in, but let's say 21. And I said, okay. Emmett said, I see you after the show was over at lunchtime. I see you at wagon 21. So I got my day clothes on, whatever that was. And I walked up to it, and he dressed with a bunch of little midget guys. And I said, hey, is Emmett Kelly in here? Yeah, well, there he is. And I looked at him. I never seen him without makeup. And I thought, that's not bad. He had beautiful brown eyes, heavy bushy eyebrows. He seemed nice to me. He always dressed he liked sports clothes. He always wore a nice sports jacket and came down the stairs, and he looked at me. He says, yeah, you always look so pretty, and thank you. Okay, and we walk, and I do not remember what the name of the town was, because, in the circus business, we travel so much that you just go to the show, you go, maybe if you have time, you go to the, you go to the town, and you come back, and a lot of people don't know what town it is, you see. Anyway, we went, and it was lunch, and he did like beer. And he said to me, he says, I sure would like to have a beer. And I said, me too. Hey, I'm a German girl, So that did it. Here's a girl who likes to have a beer, So we went in a place and just had lunch, and some other show people came in, and hi, Emmett, and hi, Evie. And from then on, it just went like a whirlwind.
Like another whirlwind.
But again, we see each other there every day.
But were tongues wagging? Were you the focus of some gossip on the show?
I'm sure.
You didn't care?
But I don't know, but I thought it, because I'm smart enough to know that people would say, well, that would never last. Well, it lasted 25 years until he passed away of a heart attack, and I was right there. So that's not so bad if people say, well, it would never last. Some of them don't last 2 years. You know that.
So that's great. I mean, it was beer.
It was beer. Yeah. Hey, my first husband, Emmett Kelly, he loved two things. He could tell you every newspaper. He loved to read newspaper, honestly. He bought every newspaper, every town he was in. And he also met pretty much almost all the, what do you call the head of the newspaper?
The editors?
The editors. He knew them by name, because he used to go in there and see the boys, he called them the boys, in the cartoon department, because Emmett was a cartoonist also. So he got to know so many. But anyway, he loved to read a newspaper, and he could tell you what town we're in, and he also knew what beer they had.
So in 1956, there's a labor strike, right, on the circus, right? And
yes.
You both left the Ringling show.
I already in 56. We missed something.
Okay. Back it up.
Okay, back up. We got to get married.
Oh, that's right.
So I have this little saying. I came to this country in 1954. I married my husband in 1955. By 1957, I had two little girls. And of course, they're old broads now. They would kill me for that.
Where did you get married?
in Edgewater, New Jersey, by the mayor, because we did not have time for anything. We were working. We did this between shows. We did it before the matinee. I remember that. Yeah. Honestly, we got...
You got married before and you honeymooned in...
Oh, that was really neat. After we got back and did the matinee, I don't know if it was the matinee or night show, and I wasn't familiar with rice. I wasn't familiar with it. And March of the Gladiators, they read in the paper, they heard it on TV, that Emmett got married to a little blonde. And the rice was frying. Honestly, I said, what's that all about?
So after your days on the circus, you're married now, you have 2 little girls, and Mr. Kelly's career really starts to turn more to television and to Nevada?
You know, since there was a big strike on the Ringling show, he wasn't allowed to, you know how strikes are. They ask him, you got to go with one of those signs at Madison Square. And Emmett said, he said, I'd do anything, but I cannot do this. These are my friends. He didn't. He says, I can't do that, but I will not cross the line. He wouldn't walk with one of these signs. I guess that's what unions do. But he did not. He said, "I will stay out, but I won't walk with a sign." So it kind of all fell apart. Anyway, we went back to Sarasota. By then I only had 1 kid, but went back to Sarasota, and then came back. I think we came back 6 months later to open at a theater in New York called they weren't allowed to use that word, Greatest Show on Ice. It was a stage show on ice, and Emmett was the star of this little, it was like a little play. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. And that lasted 6 weeks, and they showed first, or maybe the other way around. First it's a movie and then the show. I think that's the way it went. So that brings us to 1956. That's 56.
And then he did Vegas and Reno and Tahoe.
Well, Vegas he did prior to my time, but we had a contract. I always say we because my husband wouldn't leave without me. He wanted me like I was grown to the side of his thigh, but he wanted me along all the time because I drove a lot. Of course, I was a mother, and I took all the phone, whatever, you know, what a good housewife does.
He's also a whirlwind.
Yeah, I was a whirlwind, and I'm still one. We went to, Emmett got a contract to go to Harris Lake Tahoe. There was a completely turnover or different than circus. And Mr. Harrer happened to be a big Emmett Kelly fan too. And he worked there. He was not the star, but he was always the opening act, and he had a beautiful opening act. And everybody, the big stars like Jack Benny and Dinah Shore, and I mean all the big names. They were all friends to my husband. They all respected him. There were big dressing rooms, and everybody on one floor. All the performers on one.
And you met all these people.
Excuse me.
And you met all these people.
Well, absolutely. They were just, some of them were just unbelievable. Tennessee Ernie Ford. Anybody remember him? Oh, he was just fun. I remember. Outside, my husband got a special parking. Is always a, it's always a wonder. It's the guys, the policemen there.
Yeah.
They always kept that for Mr. Kelly. Everybody called him Mr. Kelly. And then one day, Tennessee Ernie Ford drove up, and this guy, you know, they don't see all the shows, and Ernie couldn't find a spot to park. But anyway, so our lights were still on. You know how the lights go off. But I said, "Hey, Emmett or Mr. Kelly, you didn't shut off your lights." And Emmett said, "Oh, they go off by themselves." Oh. But he was a wonderful guy. Tennessee Ernie Ford was just as plain as can be. I can't think of all the, they were all big people, but I can't remember all of them by name. This brain doesn't work too well.
So far, so good. So, I mean, my memories of your husband are from television. I mean, from seeing him on television, on all of those variety of shows like Jackie Gleason and Carol Burnett. And was he ever on the Red Skelton show?
No, they talked about it. Let me just jump back a few years back. The night before Emmett and I got married, we, the Whirlwinds and Emmett Kelly, we were on the Gary Moore show, I Have Got a Secret. I always thought that was so neat. So you all remember the Gary Moore show, right? I've Got a Secret. And they would flash, I think, the secret out to the audience or the TV audience. I can't remember.
We knew. Watching TV, we knew what your secret was.
Okay, that's the TV audience. Well, anyway, so then he announced us the Four Whirlwinds. And we, one by one, we came out and we did a trick. And then Emmett Kelly comes out. And he goes around and like he's, now which one should I take? We stood there, you know, looked up and down, and then he pointed to me, "I'll take that one." And that was his secret. And then they said, he is going to marry Evie tomorrow morning. And that was the big...
Your engagement was announced on the Gary Moore show?
Yeah. Well, no, the wedding. That was Emmett's secret. You remember I Have Got this show called I Have Got a Secret.
That doesn't happen to everybody. You know?
No. And you know what? Now you can find almost all those shows on, I call them on your little doodad. My family has found just about everything. John Charles Daly, he was on, what was that called? Anybody remember that?
John Charles Daly?
What's My Line? You can see that now if you know how to do all that. But the one I want to see is because I'm there, whirlwind, you know, I can't find it.
So the challenge today is Google Emmett Kelly on I've Got a Secret, and we'll find it.
Well, we just couldn't find, but anyway, go ahead.
So, 25 years on television in Vegas and Reno and Tahoe, 25 years, and eventually it ended. Was Mr. Kelly performing right up to the end, or did he retire?
Can I jump one more time?
Sure.
In those years also, because that hits home, he got a contract to go to Germany to appear on a show called Der Goldene Schuss. That means the golden shot. It was a variety show, and he was a guest from America, Mr. Kelly, and I helped the light man because it takes the know-how. It's a routine, so I help.
You should explain the routine about the spotlight.
Oh, I'm sure almost everybody who knew Emmett Kelly knew he was known by the spotlight. He would chase, and he has a certain routine. And the end of it was also always he would make the spotlight so small, and by a curtain he would lift the curtain and shove it under there, and the lights went out. But in Germany, of course, Emmett doesn't speak German, so I was the interpreter, and I went up with the spotlight man, which I did quite often in theaters for him. And so I was sitting in the audience, which I think is really neat, to watch some of the rest of the show. And there was a guy sitting next to me, and he said to me, you Mrs. Kelly, you speak so good German. And I said, well, I was born here. And so I tell him a little bit about me. He was an agent. He said, oh, I know of your act. So
Had you been back to Germany since?
Oh, yeah, quite often. But now I haven't been back in 10 years.
Yeah.
Too much happened.
Too much.
Too much happened. 2 new hips, 2 God knows what.
So, it'll come to me. There was something I wanted to ask you, and it's skipped my mind. But so eventually, Mr. Kelly's career ended, and you lost him. But you had come to Sarasota. Tell us your first. Do you remember the first time you came to Sarasota?
Yes. As at that time, Emmett and I were dating, and like you go any place, you got to find a place to live. So prior to getting here, Emmett said, I'm going to rent a little house. When I say a little house, and Uschi was my partner. The other girls, they did their own thing. But Uschi was my partner. We always lived together. And so he rented this little house on Osprey Avenue. It's no longer there. It had 2 bedrooms and, these old little houses. But we were lucky. So my husband, he paid for the rent. I was rich sheep. and I did the cooking. I cooked ever since I'm 12 years old. Everybody says, oh, Evie's a good cook. Oh, Evie's a good cook. Well, I love to cook, and I love to eat. So anyway, that little house was on South Osprey Avenue, and he was not my husband then, but we were together, and Uschi and I, we had 1 bedroom, he had the other bedroom, and that's the year we also went to Cuba, to Havana. We don't have that on there, but I thought I'd throw that in.
No, you should.
So
we couldn't get everything on this one piece of paper in these few minutes.
I know. But that's kind of interesting. The Whirlwinds were asked by the show to go to Havana, to the Palacio de Porti, and that was just on the end of the Batista going downhill, and the whole city was going downhill. But the building evidently was a nice big building. It was always full of people. I guess that was the only entertainment they had at that time. But during the daytime, you hardly see anybody in the street. But anyway, shortly after that, it fell apart.
And did you, through all these years, did you keep a home in Sarasota during all that?
Always. I have lived in Sarasota for 62 years. And we lived in that little house, and then we bought a house in Cherokee Park, and we lived there. Well, I lived there 20-some years, but Emmett passed away shortly of 20 years at that house. He had a heart attack right in his front yard. Yeah. So. But
you remarried.
I remarried.
To another man fascinated with the circus,
It's
right?
very fascinating. When I say we, I always mean Emmett. We went to New York to film a commercial having to do with silicone. And I was on stage. It was already dark. I remember it was in some weird end of town where a woman should not walk around, and I had to go and get something from a pharmacy. And I was backstage and watching the filming going on, or they were doing rehearsal, and I said, does anybody know if there is a pharmacy around? Well, nobody, no, I don't know. And there was this gentleman standing there, and he said, Mrs. Kelly, I can walk with you, I know one. And that happened to be John Lenz. And I said, what's your connection? Why are you here? And he said, well, I wrote the commercial for Young and Rubicamp. Jack was a writer with Young and Rubicamp. And that's the way I met John Lenz for the very first time. But my husband had known him because he used to write for I don't know if it was the White Tops or another magazine. So he had met Emmett before, but I never met him. So,
but he was a circus historian by hobby.
He loved the circus, but he was definitely a circus historian and a collector of circus posters, vintage circus posters. And he also had a pretty good knowledge of the carousel horses. We have all kinds of books and still have them.
So tell us a little bit. I want to get your take on changes in Sarasota. It's been 60-some years of Sarasota. Do you still see the Sarasota you came to?
62 years. The first time I ever saw it, I fell in love with it. It was small. I don't think there were more than 60,000 people in Sarasota. It was so idyllic. It was, to me, coming from Europe, it was small, it was quaint, it was quiet. If we would go to the beach, by then my little girls would call it the big pool. We want to go to the big pool. We go out there. There was no parking lot. It was just you drive up to the sand and there was the water. And when you go out there, since I said the town was small, and we would go out there and, oh, look, there's Susie. Oh, hi there. We all know each other. Same thing going downtown. You go downtown. Anybody ever remember Helen Griffith? She used to write for the Sarasota Herald Tribune. He became a good friend, and of course she loved my husband because she said, you're a good copy. You will know what that means.
Did you continue in association with the circus people, the circus folk in town?
I'm sure I belong to Circus Fans of America. I belong to the club, to the tent. I don't go out there too much because I feel like I'm the only one living on this end of town, and the club is way out. I got to drive like at least 7-10 miles. And my eyes are not that good anymore, so I don't go too often at night.
Yeah.
But yes, I love them all. They're wonderful people.
And Mr. Lenz was involved, you told me, here at the museum as well.
John Lenz, I called him Jack. He was definitely one of the most wonderful
historians?
Yes, he was a circus historian. He was a volunteer. He was, and because of him, and anybody who knew him, he kept the circus museum here at the museum alive. He spent a lot of dollars to keep it going, and well, they respected him. He was a volunteer, but there was a secretary who was paid. That was okay. There was a secretary, and then came a time, I think he spent at least, they moved here, I don't remember, dates are not that much in my brain. They moved here, and then 5 years after they moved, him and his wife moved here, and 5 years later she passed away, not accidentally, unexpectedly she passed away, and she became my good friend. So then Jack kept going, and he had me come out here. I spent time here too, we painted wagon wheels, and I helped him he was a restorer of posters. I helped him with that. I didn't do much, but now, Evie, you do this and you do. But yeah, I've been out here. I've been coming to this museum ever since I came to Sarasota, and there's been a lot of difference. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. We're running out of time if we haven't already.
Oh, my goodness.
I told you it'd go by quickly. Oh. Did we leave anything out, except a lot?
Let's think right quick. You wanted to ask me when I became a citizen.
That's right. You actually, October 6th, 1961, a big day in your life.
First, I took a correspondence course in citizenship, which I almost finished, and then I got a call that it's time to come in, and we went to a federal court in Tampa in front of a judge or whoever he was. He was very kind, and they give you about 12 or 15 questions, and I did all of them except one. So I became a citizen. That was a wonderful feeling because you got to swear you give up your old country. So I have become a citizen on October 6th in 1961. And after that, I don't think too many people get that. But after that, I received a letter from our then Congressman, James A. Haley from the 7th District. Naturally, I still have that letter. But I don't think anybody, unless the Ringlings, they all know who he was. But I was very proud of that. And matter of fact, he used to come to the club once in a while.
Well, that is a good note to end on.
Yeah,
you
okay.
came to our country. You enriched our country. You're
Thank
a citizen
you.
now.
Yes.
Almost as long as I've been.
I'm a very proud citizen. And I'm very, very conservative. I even make my own breadcrumbs. True.
Do you make the bread first or just the crumbs?
No, I save the bread, and I just like homemade breadcrumbs.
Well, listen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing the wonderful stories.
Thank
you bet.
you. Thank you.
Don't get up quite yet. As always, out in the Visitors Pavilion, just across the hall, there'll be a reception where you can meet our guest and thank her, as we all do here at the Ringling. In 2 weeks, we'll be back, and we're going to visit with Pedro Reyes, who came to this country also to perform.
Great. I'll be here.
You'll be here?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you, Evie.
Take the rest.